the foundation on how people measure their self-worth will be different for everybody. But if you are somebody who has watched a lot of porn, that foundation can be really fucked up. Depending on what kind of porn you watch, depending on what's going on, depending on how often you watch it. But it's interesting because when you think about men, there's this perception that you have to be the biggest, you have to be the strongest, to be a real man, to be an alpha, right? And it's not just the biggest in physical size and muscle mass. Porn literally tells you, and there are videos in the porn industry where having a smaller dick makes you less worthy, makes you less of a man. But when you consider porn even just outside of that genre, the best porn stars are the ones with the biggest dicks. They're the ones that fuck the hardest. They're the ones that literally, yeah. So it depends on what you're watching. I came across porn at a pretty young age, and I was exposed to pretty sexually explicit things at a pretty young age. So I've seen a lot of different types. But something that they all have in common is this, there's, maybe it's just the porn that I've watched, but I don't typically watch porn where the men in it have small dicks. And this includes straight porn that I've watched and gay porn that I've watched. So there is a message there, right? So if you consider that porn is basically telling people that your dick size matters, then you have to consider what that does to someone who doesn't have that dick size. And I think about this when I think about people who are very readily signing up to be in positions of power. When I think about men who are needing to be classified as alphas, needing to assert dominance, needing to show, in quotations, their power, I think of the fact that there is a huge population of men who are walking around believing that their dicks, whether it's the way that it looks or the size of it, is what makes them unworthy, and so that they have to then show their worthiness and show their power in a different way. And what's interesting about that, aside from the fact that I think a big part of that comes from porn, is that men primarily write porn and produce porn. So in a way, men are telling men that they are not real men unless they have a certain aspect to them, which is then causing men who believe they are not real men to assert their dominance and prove their power in other ways. It's interesting, because you think of people in positions of power that lack empathy, that do not know how to show compassion, do not care about anybody but themselves, do not know how to lead people of different, diverse backgrounds, and that only care about themselves. And you think, what's I'm always curious of what's the missing link here. I I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I would never. I don't care so much about what somebody else is doing that I would want to force them to do what I think they should be doing. So where is that lack of empathy and compassion coming from? And it does come from a lack of self-worth. Because if you don't believe you are worthy and you have been told you are not worthy by whatever it is you're watching, whether it's porn or whether it's your family or whether it's governments or schools or religions or whatever it is, they're all telling us in some way that we have to be, do, or have something in order to be worthy, in order to be accepted into another realm, or to get a promotion, or to level up, or to have this lifestyle, or whatever it is. But if you're getting that message, especially if you're somebody who watches porn pretty actively, and you're getting that message over and over again, even if it's not something where you're like spending time thinking, oh, my dick isn't as good as this person's, you're still getting that message over and over again, because it's kind of like advertising. You're seeing what you're not, right? And you're believing that you're not worthy because you are not that. That works in a lot of different ways, and we're talking about porn specifically, but in the entertainment industry, where you're seeing people on the big screen that don't look like you, and all of a sudden you think you're not worthy, because why am I not good enough to compete or to be on screen or to have this or that? But if you're constantly watching porn and you are getting that message, it, to me, makes sense that, especially if there is a bigger problem than just a few inches off, if you are somebody who has a micro penis, or if you had a circumcision surgery that did not go well and you're left scarred, like we as, I think, as a society, but men typically assign so much value to their penises because we can say society tells them, but really it's the biggest contributor to that is porn. And so if you're getting that message and then you don't fit into that, you don't fit into that image, then that can damage your self-esteem. That can damage your whole perception of what the world is, because you don't think you belong in it. And that can go a lot of different ways. If you're a little bit more emotionally aware, you can start to understand that you're valuable, whether you have something or not. But it can also go into needing to prove that you are the man, that you are the one that's in control, that you are the power, that you are the dominant. And then we have situations where, like I said, people want to go into power to just have power because they don't have it in other ways. And it becomes a problem. I mean, if you think about everything that's going on in the world, like, I'm not saying every single politician or leader who's trying to blow up different places has a micro penis. What I am saying is that if you have to prove your power by some external aspect, it's because you lack the internal ability to do so. And with porn, going back to the main topic, kind of came off from there, but with porn, it's that message over and over again. It's so damaging. But again, it's written by men. So men are telling men that they are not worthy of being men, and then they become men who act unworthy, and do things that make them unworthy. It's this cycle of just unworthiness and of perceived dominance that lives more in someone's head than in reality. And yes, they can do things that impact other people and that control other people, and they can make laws that make other people feel like nothing. But at the foundation of those is this belief that they themselves don't deserve anything. And again, we're talking about porn. That thing might be their dick size. It's an interesting thing to think about, because there's not much you can do about something like that other than be so secure in who you are and realize that you are valuable and you are loved and you are worthy without having to be, do, or have something specific. That's an internal thing. Like, you don't get that externally. There's no way to do that externally. Not truly. I mean, you can have surgeries and you can do, cover things up and you can hide things and you can do whatever you want, but it all has to happen internally. If you're always using the external to validate yourself, you're never going to be validated. So it's really hard to think about how that issue might be corrected when it lives in so many places. And that issue being, putting, self-worth, really. But that it lives in so many places like porn. And again, it's interesting because men are the ones that typically write and produce it. So it's this cycle, and it's like, okay, what is the answer to get off of that cycle? And like I said, it's an internal journey that has to be taken by each individual. I mean, this is true for everybody, not just men, but everybody has to do this internal kind of alignment with who they think they are and who they really are, and to understand that they are worthy regardless of what they do, and hopefully that inspires them to do good just because it feels good to do good. But outside of that, like, if you're somebody who's still watching porn and you're taking that message on, it can be really damaging if you don't know how to separate yourself. I guess the alternative is to write more inclusive porn, or to limit your exposure to it. But I guess the whole point of this is just to highlight the coincidence that this feeling of inadequacy that a lot of men feel come from the initial feeling that men put on themselves through porn. Something to think about.